Great. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for attending the program this evening about going abroad. And your job search is really important, and you can see that I put up something about keeping positive, but it's also to remind you to bring a camera when you go abroad, because going abroad is going to be awesome. You're going to want to make every moment count, and you're going to want to take your camera with you and capture moments that are good memory makers. And I think that some of the feedback that I've been getting from some students abroad so far is that their only challenge has been trying to find that job back here at home. And so we don't want that to spoil your experience, because this is going to be one of the best experiences that you have during college. You can come on in. Don't worry, come on in. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to say maybe your first name, your major, and then you can perhaps tell me where you're intending to go if you've been accepted and whatnot. So we can start, skip over these two right here.
I'm Patrick, econ major, and I'm going to London.
Okay, great.
I'm Josh, I'm an Italian major, and I'm going to Italy.
Italy, awesome.
I'm Nick, I'm an accounting major, and I'm going to London next fall.
Great.
I'm Nico, I'm still an economics major, I'm going to London.
I'm Ramit, I'm a finance major, I'm going to Birmingham.
I'm Sean, I'm a finance major, I'm going to University College Dublin.
Great.
I'm Grace, I'm going to London. I'm a finance major, but I'm doing community engagement.
Great.
I'm Julia, I'm finance major in London.
Going to London.
Kiara, accounting major in Guatemala.
Guatemala. I knew that. We talked today. That's great. Well, all of those places are incredible. And if I was to quiz you right now on what the time is there, what's the time difference? Does everybody know what the time difference is? What about London? Where's my London people? What do you know?
It's like 4 hours.
It's 4 hours. Okay. So that's one of the things we're going to take a look at when we look at the tips. Okay. So tonight's discussion, we're going to talk a little bit about the cell, and what I mean is in terms of taking your experience. I know you haven't landed there yet, but when you get there, you're going to be conscious of what you're learning and how you're going to sort of sell it back to the company that you're hoping to gain experience with. And that could be an internship or a full-time job. It is about the cell. It is about you thinking about your experience in that way, in terms of it's an opportunity that differentiates you between another candidate. It is an incredible opportunity for you. About 75% of recruiters will say that they will pull a candidate because they have a study abroad program on their resume. So it actually moves your resume to the top of the pile. So that's pretty impressive. So you want to be thinking in those positive terms the whole time and thinking about your experience as a way to sell it. Okay? We're going to talk a little bit before you leave and then while you're there. Now, while you're there is not going to include, let's see, Italy, we've got some great food. In Dublin, we've got some great beer. I can hear a lot of different places that I'm listening to in terms of fun, which you should enjoy, okay? So let's take a look at the cell, and that's a little small, I can see that. What you're learning, what your skills you're developing, and what abilities you're going to possess when you go over there, okay? You want to constantly be looking for opportunities that you can sell yourself in a way that is going to say, I'm going to participate in this workshop, or I'm going to go to this type of class because I know that it's going to be transferable on my resume or in terms of my conversations with employers. Okay? Acquiring that professional experience is something that you should be thinking about behind all of this. We all want to have fun. We all want to go and do things where we're going to be, but we want to think about the academics that we're going to be taking and also the professional experience. I know some of you are going to London, which includes an internship as well. And you're going to talk a little bit about changing your elevator pitch now by saying, maybe starting as I embark on a study abroad in London or in Italy or in Dublin, wherever it may be, and talk about what you hope to acquire there. That's going to sort of enlighten you a little bit about what you hope for and also about what might be getting people excited to hear about how your trip is going to be, and they're going to get anxious about it. The other thing is you want to talk about being thoughtful about it. So these are just some examples of how people have written it on their resumes. And I'm going to give you the slides so you can see the details on that. Comfortable working with people from different cultures, adapting to new environments, gaining valuable knowledge in a multicultural environment. These are things that can be placed on your resume now because certainly you're going to be thinking about sending those applications out while you're there, okay? So you want to do that ahead of time. The things that I underline here, like adapting, multicultural work environment, and communicating and managing processes, all of those things are really of the workplace of the future. So you're going to appear, your perception is going to be very, very good in the eyes of the recruiter. You're going to appear ahead of your time, advanced in thinking. You want to use those words very, very loosely in terms of your emails, correspondence, constantly bringing up where you are and what you're doing. Make sure that that's very fluid, okay? And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. So, for example, when you're sending an email to a recruiter indicating that you have an interest in the company, and I'm going to recommend that you do that prior to going by saying you're intending to go to London this fall, and these are some of the things you hope to learn. You want to be very thoughtful in sort of pushing the sell to say this is why I'm going to be valuable after the experience. They really do appreciate that. I know it sounds boastful, it sounds very bold, if you would, but you should really be thinking in terms of selling you as a product. Okay? So here are some things before you leave. Organization is really the key. How many of you have already done an internship already? Okay, so were you organized? I know you were because you were in my class,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I know you're organized. I know you're thinking about it as a process. Probably, what would you say in terms of percentages is it done online, the application process? How much percentage would you say?
100 for me.
Oh, yeah, right. So what I want you to do is have a little bit of a paradigm shift around the fact that it is online. And it's online for the students that are here. So it's really no different from you, and I'm going to use London as an example. It's really no different from you. So I want you to come to the table not like you're sort of behind in the job search because you're away. Come to the table and come to the game with that full 100%, like I'm here, I'm listening, I'm with you. Okay? Because that mindset is really going to change your communication style when you email people. It's going to feel a little less, for lack of a better term, desperate. Like, oh, please give me an internship. We don't want that. We want to say, look, I'm away right at the moment, and I'm going to make it really easy for you to talk to me. I'm going to have that ease of business, and I'm totally comfortable with myself that I'm across the ocean, and I'm still learning more. And not only that, when I come back, I'm going to be even more benefit to your company. Okay? And I know that's very bold, but that's the way I want you to think. So, before you go, we're going to update your resume. You're going to start writing a couple of cover letters. You're going to have a packet of materials that are going to really keep you organized while you're there. Okay? You're going to update your social media. You're going to look at your LinkedIn account. You're going to definitely change some of your summaries, talking a little bit about the things that I mentioned in the last one, in the cell. It's going to encompass what your LinkedIn is all about. So, you're going to create a spreadsheet of target companies. How many of you have done that already? The people in my class better have done that. And I'm going to send around an example. There's a couple. And just please know that these are fake. These are not real names and real numbers. So these are fake spreadsheets, just for the students who have never done this before. But this is what it should look like when you're organized with your job search. Okay? And here, while we're here in the States, you would be having certain categories like recruiter name, email address, anything of that nature. When you're abroad, you're going to have things like, did I follow up? What time could I call this person? What is the time zone that I'm talking to this person? Did I check the LinkedIn account for alumni? So you're going to have a little bit more categories that are going to keep you organized in terms of follow-up. So determining the timeline for the college fairs, the applications, and the connections, and estimating the time zones is going to make someone have an ease of business with you. So if you're the product and they're interested in buying this product, they want to make sure that the communication is easy, that you're not panicked, that they're not panicked, and you're going to make it easy for them to connect with you. How many of you have target companies that you're already interested in? Can you name one? GE, perfect example. GE is a great company. They have multiple recruiters and multiple contacts. So you may even want to reach out to them prior to you leaving, which would be, when are you leaving for your?
Like in the fall.
Okay, so September-ish, okay. So maybe a week prior to you leaving, you would email some of the recruiters, and those are on the Husky Career Link, the names of those people, and I certainly can help you with that. You can email them in anticipation of your leaving and saying questions like, I know the time zone is XYZ, and I know your recruiting process is this because I checked Husky Career Link. And therefore, I want to know if there's a good time that maybe we can do an informational interview on the phone or on Skype. Here is my Skype address. So you're making it very easy for them to sort of respond to you. And not only that, you're actually getting a jump on the job search prior to those who are applying in the fall. Okay? Now, you may find some companies don't have the Skype option. You may have some companies who only take a phone call. You may have some companies that will say, I'm sorry, email is the only way that I'm going to be able to communicate with you. That's fine. That's where you're going to mark that on your spreadsheet, and you're going to be clear about which companies you want to go after. It may mean that you add a few more companies. It may mean you go to companies that are a little bit more innovative, like a GE. Okay? It may mean that you're paying attention to companies that recruit at UConn, so they are specifically looking for somebody who's at UConn, and they would be willing to do the little extra effort to talk to you on Skype. Okay? Because I'm talking to a couple of folks right now that are in London, and that is what some of the, sort of, you called it mistakes, if you would, the challenges that they're having, which is that they are applying for companies where there's a ton of follow-up because maybe not, did they not recruit here? Okay, maybe Goldman Sachs in New York, or some really big companies that take a lot of attention and communication. Whereas the companies that come here on a regular basis are ones that are going to do the little extra effort. I do know that John Legato from GE is going to be perfectly fine with talking with you on Skype, okay? And he certainly can get, that advocacy for you. So when you determine the fairs and the application process, those things are on your spreadsheet. The career fairs happen, I think there's 1 or 2 in the fall, right? They happen this past fall. One of the things that we do is we will look at the list of companies that are planning on attending. So obviously the web is going to be your friend. You're going to check the Center for Career Development. You're going to see all the companies that you're interested in. You're going to see the name of the recruiter on the Husky Career Link, and you're going to email them either before the career fair or right after the career fair. And you're going to say, unfortunately, I was not able to attend in person, but this doesn't mean that I'm not as enthusiastic about this company. Is there a way that I can talk with you via Skype, phone, anything that's available? Okay, so it's the follow-up. And I have to tell you that that is probably better than most students would be doing at the career fair, and they're there in person. Okay, so again, I don't want you to feel that you're 10 steps behind. All right, so one of the things about determining companies that recruit here, click have a check-in back home strategy. Obviously, I'm going to look at something, I think a calendar. You may use your phone as a calendar. I would put little messages into your phone that perhaps, like, this could be our group right here, all the students that are, a check-in. I have some students from London right now that check in with me every 2 weeks to see what hot jobs are happening, what's come out recently, if there's a company that called me, any of those things. I'm going to know right at that moment, and they're going to Skype with me and get some information and then act on it. Okay? Now, this sounds like a lot of work, right? So what I would do is definitely prep yourself with all of these dates. And how many of you have Skype already? Do you have a Skype name and a Skype? Okay, that's probably number 1 on the list. So you can even search on LinkedIn to see if there's alumni networking in the area that you're going to be. I happen to know there's nobody going to Paris here, but Paris is one of the largest contingencies of alums, believe it or not. So there may be some alums in London that are doing some expats that are doing some work there that you possibly could network with, and I can help you do that. So here we go, create a job search packet. As I said, a portfolio of all the things, the projects, the things you want to talk about. You want to maybe draft a few very clear professional emails for the recruiters that will say, you know, again, I'm not there in person, but however, let you know that I'm very enthusiastic and I'm really interested in this position, and I'd like to connect with you on this date at this time, okay? You want to create ways in which that selling process happens by saying you're creating an email signature with your LinkedIn, your Skype number, maybe even hyperlinks with time zones, letting people know where you are, making it really easy for them to be clear as to where are you and when can I reach you, okay? You can do job alerts for yourself. Indeed, Intern Here, Idealist, LinkedIn, these are all things that can be used in terms of tools. But remember, while you're there, you want to make sure that you just schedule a certain amount of time. Like, for example, say Sunday night from 5 to 7. Because you're going to want to be traveling, doing fun things. You don't want to be having to do this every single day. What you want to do is just schedule the time that is for the job search time, and then that's the time when you're following up with folks. Okay? Because I have found that some of the students right now that are, even though it's 4 hours away in London, they're missing a few things because they're not scheduling time during their week to say this isn't for job search. Okay? So, let's go while you're there. A couple of things. Using the social media can be really helpful. Scheduling a specific time each week on your job search, as I said. You can check in with us back home. Before you leave, it might be a good idea to either meet with myself or the Career Center. They would talk with you about some of your target companies so you can get really organized with that before you leave if you haven't done it already. And again, be a UConn calendar stalker. I would definitely say the Career Fair, Employer of the Day, guest speakers come. How many of you are in like a finance society? Right? You've got good speakers that come there, right? So you want to make sure you're checking the calendar. You're saying, oh, I noticed, you know, GE came last week. Great email to write to somebody. I'm in the Finance Society. GE showed up last week. Wasn't there in person. I'm studying abroad. Here are a few things I'm learning while I'm abroad and some skills I'm going to take home with me. So I'd love to, you know, set up an informational interview. It's a great tool to use. Watch the deadlines on your applications, because that's usually when you might miss a deadline, okay? And more importantly is, how many of you are going to be staying in a dorm in London, I think, right? Is that how they stay in London, mostly?
Some of them are dorms and some of them are almost like apartments.
Okay, apartments, okay.
Some of them, so it depends.
So I had a really good conversation with the people in London, at the University of London, and they mentioned that there's a little bit of a spotty internet issue, depending upon where you live. So one of the first things that I would do while you get there is right away say, can I get at least 2 spots where maybe I go to a coffee shop or I get free internet? I do know that the University of London has a career center on campus. It is contracted out by another company. It's actually not employees of the university, and we're still waiting to hear whether or not students from UConn can use the Career Center there. So that might be an option. I'm going to keep you posted on that. But I think that, you know, the library, you do have access to the library, you know, coffee shops, anywhere that you can ask the other students where there might be a quiet place where you can have a Skype conversation or where you can get solid internet so that it's not spotty. Okay? Following up is the key, and I'd like to hear from you probably about question and answer in a few seconds, just what your concerns are, because I think that some of your concerns can be, you know, shrunk down just a little bit with some of the organizational tools that you use in job search. Okay, so here's some last words. These are some of the things that have happened over the last couple of weeks. People often apologize for being away, and I want you to lean not to do that. Okay, you should say, it's so fabulous, I am away, bring value to the table. Don't apologize for being away, just make them aware that you're away, but then make the business, that ease of business happen, okay? One of the things that comes up a lot is that students will say, oh, God, job search is so hard when you're abroad. It's really hard, and you can kind of feel that heavy nerves that's going on for them, okay? Try to refrain, keep away from saying those things. Job search is hard whether you're here or there. I mean, to be honest with you, if I was you, I would rather be there at some point than stores, right? So you're having a good time and you're doing great things. It is hard. Job search is hard overall. So just don't give the perception that anything that adds another dimension to it is going to set you off, okay? Because that employer doesn't want to hear that that's hard. You being abroad and doing that, the employer does not want to hear that. They want to hear that it's easy, here's my Skype, here's what time you can call me, here's my resume, and this is the value that I bring to the table. Again, watch your tone. If you're frustrated, others will also be frustrated, but if you make it really easy for them, it will happen. And it's, the time frames are owned by the company. So, you're not going to hear back right away from people, but you certainly can reach out and ask for status checks. Okay? So I'm going to stop there. I definitely want to hear from you if you have any concerns or questions about the process. Up to you. And yes.
For companies that are recruiting on campus in the fall, is it possible to schedule yourself into one of the time slots that they have here and Skype with them then?
That would be dependent upon the company. So that would be the question, as I mentioned about GE. That would be the time where you'd say, I'm planning on applying for XYZ company. Should I be chosen for an interview? I would really appreciate if I could have a time slot for Skype. Is that possible? Absolutely. See, I think what the challenge becomes is that students, number one, don't ask. Number two, assume the answer is no. Right? Yeah.
Because of the time difference, should we be a little more forward on what time slots we want to speak with them? Like, oh, I can speak at any time, and then saying, okay, we can speak.
Yeah, that's probably, if you're going to be flexible and adaptable, that's probably the way to go. I noticed that the students, when they were speaking with me, they were very conscientious of the fact that we're on a 9 to 5 schedule here at the university. So they were saying, well, I'd like to Skype with you 5 o'clock your time, or 4:30 your time, which is this my time, or they didn't even tell me what it was their time. They just said, what's good for you? Which was very good, actually. I thought that was very convenient. Yeah.
Are many of the companies open to Skype interviews?
So far, they have been good. I can't say that they have been the best. There are some smaller companies that still say, I'm not interested in Skyping, or we don't have that capability. But I think that if you approach them prior to the semester you're leaving, I think that they would be a lot more open to an informational interview, even if it was in person. So maybe even scheduling those.
Well, enough what she said. For companies that don't want to Skype, should we make our LinkedIn as dressy as possible, because they're probably going to be referring to that?
Correct. Yeah, and they are definitely going to be looking at your resume. So any kind of approach you can take when it comes to cover letters, indicating some of the sell points that I mentioned about you being abroad, that will grab their attention enough that they may be willing to do a phone conversation. Because remember the regular process of a job search. Some of you have already done it, okay? Application, 2 weeks. Another 2 weeks, you get the phone conversation. Another 2 weeks, you may come in person. It's a lot of time in between in terms of it doesn't happen fast. So you do have a lot of time that, the semester's going to go by, and you may even not be approaching these folks until, I don't know, when do you return, most of you? When's December? Is it right before the holidays? 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. So even that is I can recall last December, United Technologies didn't even make their decisions until December 18th. So you could say to them things like, what is the last possible day that I could speak to you in person before you're going to make a decision if you're not available at Skype? Keep going. Keep being persistent. Keep saying how much you're interested in the company. And that's part of the reason why I say try to be organized prior. Because if you're not passionate about the company, or if that's not really one of your target companies, then it's going to drop down on the list. But if it really is, I'm going to use ESPN as usually a top company for students. So if that is your goal, then you want to make sure that they are, being paid attention to by you. Okay? And even if it's just a conversation by email, you just want to keep selling. Okay? Any other questions? These are great questions. What concerns do you have? Any concerns?
Well, I have a question. It's kind of general, but are rotational programs and like specific job positions, are those like on a different time frame? Kind of like UTC comes here, like Aetna, they have like these programs, but like there's like specific job positions. Are those different?
Well, I knew someone was going to ask that question, and I think that in the fall, that is when a lot of the rotation programs are going to come up with their job opportunities. However, it doesn't mean that you're cut off forever. So if it doesn't work out, that they don't have that opportunity to speak with you, or you don't make the cut, or whatever it may be, 99.9% of the time it has nothing to do with you being abroad. It just might be that you're not the right candidate. Now, in that aspect, they still will come back again in the January-February timeframe and still bring in maybe a different type position. So you're not going to cut yourself off, especially the finance majors that I hear, you're not going to cut yourself off in any way from those programs. It just means you have to do 1 or 2 extra steps in order to make sure you're an applicant for the program. That's why I think the informational interviews are probably going to be your best friend, because they are ways in which you will actually talk to the recruiter prior to the applicants. And I know that no student is doing that. So I can tell you that these recruiters are not going to be bombarded by this. So even if all 8, 9 of you did that, you're not all looking at the same companies.
Can I
Yes,
ask?
Alana.
Can you explain a little bit what an informational interview is?
Yeah, great question.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so the students in my class could probably tell you, right? But yeah, it's an informational interview is an opportunity for you to have a conversation. So that's the basic of it. Typically, it's an opportunity for you to either interview with a networking contact or a recruiter that is specific to that company. So therefore, you're going to have a conversation where there's an introduction of, maybe you'll say your 30-second elevator pitch, and then that person will say a little bit about themselves. So it's more of an exchange versus an interview, which is kind of like a fire hose of questions where you're being evaluated. Now, I'm not saying that during that informational interview you're not being evaluated, because you are, but it's more of a conversation for you to find out, like, I'm really interested in the job you now do as a financial analyst. I'd love to hear more about you. It's taking the time to schedule that 20 minutes is usually, the magical 20 minutes that people can give, and it can be done on the phone. So how many of you are getting international phones? You're going to make sure your phone is international. That's probably a good thing. I know it's a little extra cost, but it's probably a good thing, because that can also be your alternative to Skype if they don't. But from what I've put out, I put out something on LinkedIn to get some feedback from some of the recruiters. I just went downstairs and I was talking to the HRACC people that are downstairs, and they were all open to Skype. I said, how do you feel about Skype? And they said, great, as long as it's scheduled. They make it easy for us. You hear that again? They make it easy for us because I'm not chasing you. Okay, I had one student this past week said I had sent him an invitation to talk by Skype and said, I'm going to give you some coaching. He didn't show up for the Skype appointment, and he didn't tell me another day. So now he's lost. That's not what you want in job search in general, and that's not what you want while you're abroad. You want to be the person first to speak and the person first to react to the jobs. So the only way you can do that is, number 1, be organized, and number 2, set a time frame for yourself before you go and while you're there to work on job search. Yes?
Do you know if it's common at all if any companies allow you to interview in their international offices for positions in the U.S.?
We haven't heard that, like out in the street. People have not been talking about that, but certainly that could be an option. You can offer that option, but you have to remember there's probably some security issues. You're going to look at companies that are like large companies, big banks are going to probably offer you that. I know Royal Bank of Scotland, would interview here and would also have a London office. You're looking at very big companies that might have that, but there's also security risks that they have about someone walking in off the street without You know, when you apply online and you apply in the United States, you're doing a legal transaction online that gives you security. You know, they're really checking you out before you come in their building. Your social security number is the key, which isn't in some of the European countries. That's irrelevant. So you can see it's a little tricky, but the biggest thing of all, I've seen success by someone being persistent. It's persistence. Okay. And I can't tell you enough how much important it is to, number one, sell yourself, and number two, use those career fairs like as if you're there. And I can show you on Husky Career Link, you know, we can all be a group now. We can be our check-in group if you'd like. You know, you can talk with us every other week. You can call me on Skype, check in for 10 minutes, just say this is what I did. This is what Robert is doing right now from London. He sends me a little check-in. He tells me his spreadsheet. He shows me what he's doing, and I make some suggestions on what's happening here back at home. Okay? I know you can do it. You can do it. Just looking at me like, I don't think so. Anything else? I want you to be fearless, though. Use this moment. I mean, this is, if I, you know, as the people who are in my class know I'm a psycho networker, I would be on LinkedIn finding every person that is in London that has my major and, you know, was an alum and say, can we meet for coffee? I mean, in London, you know, in European countries, they're a little bit more open to meeting in coffee shops and things like that, more so even in New England. They're a little more free. Yes?
Like, how would we go about networking with UConn alums in London?
On the LinkedIn site, so the top part of LinkedIn, you know, the top tabs, there's a connections tab. So on the connections tab, you would drop down and it says find alumni, and then there are locations on the left-hand side, and you can type in locations and you will see where they are. It actually aggregates it for yourself. If you find that you're not finding enough to where you're going, I think you would in London. But if you're not finding, you know, some in Guatemala, that might be a reach. But I think that Nathan Ives in the alumni office here can certainly talk with you because he's visited all of these countries and he's had great response. Okay, and I know they would be willing to help you. So I'm going to get back to you about the actual career centers on the campuses that you're going to be at, because as I said, they've been outsourced. They don't have, you know, career coaches like we have here. They're a little different. And so I'm waiting to have a conversation with them about what resources they can provide for students free of charge. Okay, so that might be a great way to. But you know, you want to look at the other students you're with, see what other campuses. You know, I'm sure you're going to have other. Boston University, Bentley, you're going to have a million colleges there. Ask those students what they're doing. I mean, really be, you know, inquisitive in terms of, like, you know, what are you doing for your job search? Doesn't hurt. Okay. So I have everybody that registered, I have all of your emails, so I'm going to create a listserv. So it would be sort of a study abroad check-in group. You can look to me in terms of, you know, watching the career centers, emails on job listings and things like that. You want to just act on them when you see them. Okay? Any other questions? It's not rocket science, right? Yeah. Okay. Have fun out there. Thanks for coming.